Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with some more countermeasures goodness. Today's creative lockdown interview is with Ian Glover from the agency Brand New Day. His 20 years in the design industry spans multiple disciplines and multiple countries. We go through the usual 10 questions and talk about his experience as an Englishman living in Bangkok. So take my hand and come with me as we dive once more into my deep, deep design pocket and take a journey overseas.
But wait, just, there's no rules, but as you can tell, the production level is incredibly low. So, and it's not like Frost Nixon interview, so, don't worry too much about it. Okay. But yeah, so what I'll do is I'll just do like a little intro thing, and then I'll probably just, so I'll start off by saying, this is always the weird bit. This is always the weird bit, and the bit I feel a bit weird. So, hi Ian. I'll start off by saying that. How are you?
I'm good, mate. It's a long time no see.
I know, mate. We've had a few emails, but I haven't really spoken to you for a long time. Not a proper chat.
No, not like this for a long time. Yeah.
So yeah, and you're the first international interview on this podcast. So you're all the way over in Thailand, and obviously I'm in London. So it's a first. You might be the fourth podcast, but you're the first international interview, so that's quite good.
I feel honoured.
So how's things with you? How's it all going?
We're okay. We're good. Like we were just saying before, it's Thailand's not been too badly affected. And we've not had like a full lockdown. We've had a curfew here, which that's been lifted. The borders are closed now, but obviously it's a big effect on the business here because it's a lot of tourism. It's got a lot of people employed in that. But we're okay. It's it has affected work, but we're doing okay.
Yeah, and are you managing to work from your home at all, or are you still going in the office, or how's it working at the moment?
I haven't got a home office, so it has been sort of like finding a corner in the bedroom and setting up something. I mean, I've had that there before, but like this, it's sort of like adjusting to. But it's not something I've had to do in the past in Thailand as well. Like with, as we can talk about later, it's working from home it's not the first time.
Yeah, sure. You're used to being huddled up the corner with a laptop, so I know exactly how that works. So obviously, because you've been working in Thailand for like 12 years.
Thinking that, it's
over a decade, isn't it?
Going on 14.
That's unbelievable. That's gone so quickly as well. Like that's because just for anyone for the one person who is listening. Like Ian and I used to live together. Well, actually, we went to college together, and we lived together in London for a while. And then you went and worked abroad, didn't you? And you've been there ever since, more or less.
Pretty much, A few visits back here and there. And
sure.
Over here for
that's right. Because I was working in Cambodia, living with my now wife, and she was running a job there for the BBC, and I was freelancing. So we did see you a little bit around that time as well, didn't we? So
we did a couple of times, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, it's always tricky because you get you get into the sort of routine of what you're doing, and it's easy to it's easy to kind of just get stuck in your routine and not kind of catch up quite so much, because while we have emailed and stuff, I haven't spoke to you half as much as I should have done, really, just to see what's going on. But
we just get like family life and things.
Well, that's it.
So.
I've got obviously the business, 2 kids. There is nothing else. You know? There's no social life. I think, oh, maybe I should go out tonight, or maybe I'll just go to bed. You know? So that's it. You know, that's the way it is.
From when I was because when I knew you in London,
yeah, we used to go out a lot. We used to go out a lot. We round Clapham. We lived in Clapham for quite a while, didn't we? And we did used to go out a lot around there.
Yeah, it was cool. I remember that.
Yeah, good times. Yeah.
Rather than forget being up pub.
Yeah, that's right. Which I'd ironically forgotten. So yeah, yeah, those were the days. But right, so basically, thanks for coming on the podcast. Like I said, this is the fourth one. You know, I'm not that busy. So I started doing actually I've been fairly, work's been fine, but I like being really busy all the time, and as it is, I'm just doing like an average day, and it's, you know, I'm just getting a chance to do some sort of more side projects that I've been wanting to do for a while, this being one of them. And obviously
I've enjoyed watching them, like, you know, I've seen you, like,
well, I've had a captive audience around the world with people just stuck in their bedrooms, so it's been quite good.
It's right for them to do it anyway, to like sort of do like a YouTube channel like that.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd give it a go, and you know, it's one of those things where as soon as I get really busy with work, I'll probably just bin it all off. You know? But at the moment, I'm enjoying it, so it's been good fun. And like I said,
a lot of views I saw when I was looking at it.
Yeah. It's been good. You know, it's been good, and also, what's been quite good is that I've been able to, because, you know, I know the situation everyone's in with work, and a lot of people are furloughed and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, a lot of clients that I work with, jobs that were going on have all been kind of put on hold and things like that. And I didn't want to be constantly pestering them saying, hey, how about that work? Remember, you know, I'm still here. I'm still, you know, so rather than doing that all the time, I thought a good way to stay in contact with them, but also to be doing something, is to do something like this, because then, you know, it keeps you in people's minds, I guess, you know. And like I said, plus it's been good. I've been able to catch up with a few people that I haven't spoken to properly for ages, and obviously like yourself, it's good to.
You work normally from home.
So the studio's at home. So I say studio, it's it's you say studio, you think you don't think box room, but you should. But it's fine, you know, it's good enough for me. And you know, I've always like with the business and that, I've always had I've just run it all myself. I've never employed anyone full time. But I do use freelancers constantly. So I've got like a web designer I use all the time. There's a photographer I use for everything. And, you know, so I've got like a little team of people that I call on when I need them, but not every job I do needs them. So it doesn't justify having a studio somewhere, but maybe that'll change. But at the moment, that suits me, because I get to spend more time with the kids, and you know, it's like, you know, do you work fairly close to where your home is?
Well, I normally have to get a train like across Bangkok. So
right, okay. Oh, I thought you were quite local to it.
I mean, it's quite compact. The city at the centre of the city, but
yeah,
you can get into work in about 20 minutes, like from here, like so. But obviously, like, it wasn't like a lot of companies haven't, like, sort of, it's not a forced, everybody's got to work at home, but like we decided it was just like for the best.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially with people commuting as well. It was like, so.
Yeah, I think you've just got, at this point, I think, you know, everyone's trying to open things up to get back to some sort of normality. So like, you just have to be sensible about it, you know. You know, I don't think like getting on a packed getting on packed trains and stuff is not, I don't think it's a good idea just yet. But, you know, you've just got to do what you've got to do also to get on with your life. So, you know, something's got to sort of balance out somewhere. So, so I've just been sort of catching up with people, and I thought it might be quite interesting to go through like a series of questions that just sort of outline your kind of creative journey, really. I'm just really nosy, it's funny because I've asked the same 10 questions to the same people, and everyone's got a different stories and different approaches to things. So I'm just interested in seeing what you think about it all, really. So I'm going to start off with the first question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
The first question is, when do you first remember yourself leaning towards being creative? So that can be like,
I think, you know, other people say, like, you know, background. Yet as a kid, you can remember, like, you know, drawing and building things, like, you know, I was into Lego sets and all that. I was quite, you know, always like creating things when I was a little kid. And I think as well, like, my mum was quite creative as well. Like, I mean, she was like an amateur artist. She liked to paint, and she was into amateur photography as well. And but she did do things like she did like things like cake decorating, and she'd take commissions on and do that, like, you know, people's wedding cakes and things like that. So that sort of thing was always going on in the. She'd have something going on like that, and Mum's.
So you were exposed to that quite. Yeah, that's good though. You're exposed to it at an early age. You know, I think that's an important thing when you're a kid, and also sort of a common driver, I think, between people I've spoken to about this is that, because all kids draw, you know, to whatever degree, but like if you've got slightly arty parents that are into a certain thing, then you tend to gravitate towards that, you know, like.
My sister did as well, but
she's an illustrator, is she?
Yeah, she is. She became like she followed it as well. So
that's right.
A fine illustrator. So both of us sort of followed that really.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I mean, so like we had sort of that sort of thing in the house, like, you know, I can even remember my mum, she did like calligraphy as well, and I think she used to do like, you know, posters and things for like the local school fete or something. So it was like, I suppose that was my first memories of graphic design as a sort of,
your mum's drawings.
But I suppose as I got a bit older, like I was okay at school, but I wasn't like, you know, really academic, and I only sort of really enjoyed like the art and design and CDT. You remember that, where you were making things?
Camshafts and wooden spoons that didn't actually hold anything because they were so badly made. But I remember attempting. I was never that good at that part of it. I always liked the kind of the drawing part of it was always fine, but when it came to like any kind of welding, you know, it wasn't really my bag. But you know,
but I can remember, like you saying, it was like sort of first sort of inkling into wanting to go into something involved in like design or drawing. And it was like, I can remember I was really into like video games, you know, like the 90s, like, you know, the early sort of Super Nintendo, Mega Drive.
Yeah, they were brilliant.
Really into all that. I used to have like, you know, all the magazines as well, pour over like.
Was it N64 was one of the magazines, wasn't it? Was it N64?
Yeah,
Nintendo 64?
Yeah, you had, what was it, the Ultimate Games Master as well, like, and all that.
Oh, that TV show was brilliant.
You remember that?
We used to, my whole family used to get around and watch that. But it had, did it have Isaac? What's the guy? Not Isaac.
Moore,
that's right. That's right. He was the games master, and he was like badly cut. His face was badly cut into like a CGI. He was in like a sort of different world, wasn't he? But his face was cropped in. Yeah. Dominic Diamond. Dominic Diamond was the guy.
I forgot the name, but So he was a games journalist, wasn't he?
Yeah. That's right.
I was really into all that, and I used to like. I suppose even like the Japanese culture of it as well, you know, because you had like sort of anime sort of characters in the games and that. And I used to like drawing all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And so I can remember like, you know, thinking, I want to, you know, try and see how could I get a job doing something like this, like in games design. And it was obviously back then it wasn't anywhere near like, it was like an emerging sort of industry back then. So
it was still like if you thought about getting into game design back then, you would think that you'd end up in like some indie studio just making like 8-bit polygon. You know, you wouldn't think. And also it was a little bit before things like Grand Theft Auto came out, where it was like Grand Theft Auto 3, where it was like a 3D world where you could suddenly have all this world building storytelling. Up until then it was like platformers.
Before the days of the PlayStation, you know, this is like really, like you say, pretty much those studios are very small, like, you know. But I can remember at school, like, you remember you had your school work experience. I wrote. We had a local company like who produced games, and I went there on my work experience, and you know, obviously I was expecting to be drawing characters and do game designing. They put me in like a little broom cupboard and gave me like one game on a Mega Drive and one game on a Game Boy and said, test this level over and over again. And I
God, okay.
spent all week doing that.
No, it's an important job, finding the bugs.
Yeah.
It's an important job.
Well, yeah, it's got quality control, isn't it? It's sort of
Actually, a kid I grew up with went in and did that full time. He used to come around our house, and me and my brothers had an Amiga, so we would like all get together and play like Kickoff 2 and all that sort of stuff. And he started off playing. He literally started off playing on our Amiga, and then he went on to do major games testing, and he did it for years and years and years. But he did say that after a while, it started to destroy him from the inside out, because like, you know, he couldn't play games and appreciate them in that way anymore, because he'd play in a kind of OCD way where he had to check every corner and check every, you know, so
every corner of the level.
Yeah, and I think now, like these massive open world games, like it, you know, they must have so many people doing the bug testing. It must just be insane. Like, you know,
films now, aren't they? Like,
yeah, well, exactly. And also the whole different there's a whole different like side to it now that wasn't really quite as prevalent when we were younger, which is, you know, there are writers and film directors, art directors, illustrators, you know, they're all in the same room working together for this thing, which I just think is amazing. Yeah, and there are courses now tailored for you to go into that career, and there's a, you know, which when we started, you know, even up to university, there probably were one or two, but they were so specialized that you wouldn't do them because you were just like, well, it's not, the chances of me getting a decent job after that seem to be pretty slim, you know, because you'll be in loads of debt.
I think that's pretty much what, like, because I remember like looking at the courses, like the local, because I left school at 16, like I said, I didn't really pursue A levels. I didn't really know what, you know, so I had this sort of interest in art and wanted this idea of doing something like, you know, graphic based design. And but the local art, like Walsall Art College there, I think what she pretty much said, what you just said to me, like the leader on the graphic design course, you could see what had sparked my interest. And she was like, you know, we'll come and give it a go, and talk me through what I'd be learning on the course. And yeah, so that's sort of what I did when I went, sort of left school at 16 and then went to do, it was like a, well, like,
was it an HND or was it?
National diploma. So it's like basically sort of like equivalent of doing an A level, but you just specialise in like the one subject. So it was like, it was really good. I loved it. But, you know, it was like in a little, it was like an old school building. So it was quite small, art college, and everybody sort of knew everybody on the slight little campus, and that, you know, and you were just doing it, graphics every day there, and they had like photography part, you know, like print rooms and that, and so I started that. I mean, we didn't touch computers until, I mean, they had like computer room, like full of like I think they had like Mac Quadras and like the beige ones. Yeah. But we didn't. They sort of, it was all about, when you started, like appreciating like the typography and like the key things behind design. So, you know, it was all quite hands-on, cutting out bits of type, even from like magazines, and making montages.
Yeah, ours was the same. And even when you and I ended up at university together, I don't really remember going into the computer room really until the, you know, end of the second year, more of the third year, you know, because I remember it being a lot of paste up and concept stuff, and you know, you could go in it, and the Mac room was just like a tool that you went to if you needed to go there. But, you know, and there's such a steep learning curve on all the programs and things there that actually, you know, you were opening yourself up to you know, a whole new world, but not necessarily one that they were teaching on our course, you know, so you had to put a lot of extra time in. So, you know, I think most of us got away with it you know, at college, because you could spend more time, you know, making stuff with your hands or drawing stuff or whatever.
I like that part of it, you know, like the craft part of it, like
Yeah.
I mean, when like, I think it was because like, when I was at the college, you know, it was like on a crossover. So one of the lecturers, like, he's a real old school printer, you know, like, and he was like, used to like marking up bits of type and using like what they called like the PMT camera, which is like an old style. It was like an old style photocopier basically,
Right.
but they used it to create like the artwork that was then sent to print. So we had to learn all that as well as learning like the computers as well. So it's sort of like you're on the crossover, but even then that sort of thing was pretty much going obsolete, you know, like when I was, you know, over the course of the 2 years I was there, it became, you know, we had more fun with it than anything else. Let's stick something on the PMT camera and like get some cool image and stuff like
so
that.
you're talking about the PMT camera being obsolete and not the old guy.
It was cool, you know, but it was like, it was proper old school, like, you know,
But you need that though, and even on our uni course, there were people there that, you know, like old Phil Thompson, you know, he wasn't going to sit and give you a lesson on the Mac anytime soon, but he could spend days and days talking about concepts and ideas and all that stuff, which is, you know, which I think you need those old school sort of minds to sort of get you in the right place so that you understand that, you know, those Macs and all the technologies just to support you, an idea is still a good idea, you know, so regardless of how you finish it. So, you know, it's those teachers are definitely valid. I don't know what they're like now. I mean, you know, I think everyone's probably starting with a laptop on day one, aren't they? It wouldn't surprise me, you know.
I do wonder how, like, it'd be interesting, like, what the process is, because it would be completely different now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
To introduce it. So.
Yeah. I'd be interested to go on a course actually to find out how heavy-handed it is with that now, because, you know, I don't know if there's many old school lecturers left, are there? You know, but so then we obviously started uni together. So you finished your course and then we started uni. So we were both at Birmingham, weren't we, at the UCE?
Yeah, so I left the you know, national diploma after 2 years, and then applied for a few different courses, but went to Birmingham with you, and
so they were good days. They were good days at uni.
It was a bit more, because that course, like you said, it was more like it was a lot of advertising in there as well, wasn't it? It wasn't just about like sort of, you know, graphics. It was like, you know, creating ad concepts and like campaign ideas as well, wasn't it? So,
a lot of that in the second year. I think the first year was like a kind of carousel of, you do photography, you do print, you do illustration, you know, and it takes you, it's like a repeat of your foundation year basically, which is like, here's a selection of things.
Some people complaining about that. They said, I've already done my foundation, why am I having to...
Yeah, well I'd already done my foundation, and I actually loved my foundation course, and then when I got to uni, it was like a sort of semi-repeat of that year. And I loved it even more because, like, you know, it meant that you could just try it out at a whole new level, you know, because they had better photographic suites, and then,
they had,
you know,
like, full colour lab and
stuff. And I think everyone who ended up being a designer had pretty much decided that's what they wanted to do before they started the course. So you could start to apply it to your trade then, you know, so you could mess around with illustration, but with a thought of where would this end up as a piece of design work, or, you know, where would this go? And I really enjoyed that course.
Yeah, it's sort of like, you know, like I say, my idea of initially wanting to do game design completely changed. Like, you know, by the time I'd started university, it was like completely different. I was like, I knew I wanted to be some, you know, a design company of some sort. It's like, you know, but even by the time I'd started, you know, like that diploma course, it sort of opened my eyes to what the world of like graphic design was about, you know. Really, sort of.
Well, suddenly, I guess, you know, it's similar to, like, because I went in originally my foundation year thinking I wanted to do illustration. And I think you realize, actually, if you're a designer, you can apply all those skills anyway, you know, and also as a designer, you get to work on loads of different stuff. So you might be doing a logo one day, then a website the next day, and then, you know, helping design a product another day, or visiting a site and doing a photo shoot one day, you know. So there's so many different aspects to the same kind of area that you work in, that you get to do all of those things, which I think is really fun. It sounds a lot more fun than
I toyed with the idea of illustration, but like, my drawing was okay, but it wasn't like up to the stand, you know, developing your own sort of style and sort of
Yeah.
like being like a professional illustrator. You need the next
Yeah.
level of skill.
And even professional illustrators, you know, they're not busy all the time. You know, but they, you know, they do a job and then it's quiet for a bit, I'm sure. Whereas, you know, and in my mind, I can't sort of stand that idea. I like I like stuff going on all the time. So, you know, and I know you're sort of the same, really. Which is, I couldn't imagine you doing a job and then sitting back for 3 months and then doing another. You know, it's just.
No, I mean, I've always been like full-time employed as well. I've never even gone into like, you know, well, I did do a bit, I suppose, when I'm going to talk about when I first came out here, but like never, not for long periods of like, you know, sort of working for myself. No.
Yeah, and that's a weird thing as well, because like I really enjoyed being employed full time, and I could easily have stayed in that scenario. It was only when my partner Caroline wanted to come over to Cambodia to do a thing for her work that I even thought, well, I might want to run a business or do something one day. So now's a good chance to kind of break free and give it a try, you know. So I freelanced while I was out there for a bit, you know, and then I just sort of caught the bug and decided that was going to be the sort of way forward. But equally, had we have stayed in the UK, I probably would have just stayed in the job I was in because I really loved working there, you know, because I was at Owen Dwelly then, and we used to do some really great stuff. Yeah, and we used to have a right lot. The main thing, aside from doing work and, you know, working hard and all that, we used to have a really good laugh all the time. So like, why would you want to leave it, you know, a sort of a scenario where that sort of fits and suits you, you know?
Yeah, I remember like when you joined all the Lacoste work and things you did.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of fashion stuff for Lacoste, and yeah, it was always good fun. And you were working in, so we finished university, and then did you get or we both did placements at different design companies?
I did do, but my like you and you guys were talking before, like on the other episodes, like you seem to have gone like to placements, and those placements kind of led into like your first job. So I did do placements, but I didn't unfortunately get like an initial job out of it. So I you know, I had to write, like, you know, sort of like wrote a lot of letters to like design firms. You know, when you finish uni, everybody was like saying like, oh, London's where it's at. And so I sort of focused on London, and I mean, I didn't even try like firms outside London. I think I went straight like, I'm going to try London and see if I can do it. And so I wrote a lot of letters, and back then it was like, you know, I suppose now if you're applying for jobs, people are usually going to send an email, a digital portfolio, and that. Back then it wasn't like that. You had to, you know, you could have sent an email, but it was like the lecturers taught us, it's like, make something cool. Like your CV.
That's
write
right.
A nice letter, and you know,
it does go a long way. I tell you what, if I ever get, not that I have recently, but if I ever have got in the past any kind of nicely crafted things that are sent through the post, that's a real thoughtful, they've thought about where this is going, who the target audience is, the design's good. That's just, even before you've opened it and read it, you're already halfway there, because it's such a good way to connect.
Do you get loads then? Like, do you get students like send in stuff? And
yeah, I did for a while. I used to, every couple of months I'd get something, just people looking for placements, or even just to, you know, in the nicest possible way, just going for a coffee and having a chat. And I've done that a few times, you know. But you know, the problem with that is that it's all about how much extra time you have, and when you know, you work by yourself like I do, you have very little, you know. And like I said, when the kids are running around, you have even less. So you know, as much as I'd like to do more of that, it's not always practical. But when you work in a bigger company and you're sort of you know, you're getting those things, you've probably got a bit more chance to reach out to people and help them. And you know, because our placements were done primarily through the contacts that our tutors had when they worked professionally. So like, they'd stayed in contact, and they're obviously kind of just passing on the opportunities that were given to them to us, you know. And I feel like it's important for us to do the same for other people. So if I ever get the chance to hook somebody up, or there's a in fact, I think when your sister came down to London once, we connected them up with Dan and Helen, who were running Dutch Uncle. That's a really big agency now. And you know, and things like that. I think you got to pass it on, because that's the only real way to get somewhere good, you know, or certainly helps you, you know.
So yeah, so I mean, so yeah, I was like saying, it was like a lot of letter writing, and I did get interviews, and because I was like, you know, in Birmingham, I had to commute down on the train, so I had to like line them up. So it was like, I've got to get 3 or 4 a day. I've got this train ticket. I've got to, you know, it's like I can't keep getting trains up and down from Birmingham. So it's like, line up the interviews and do the rounds, and so I did. I can't remember how many trips I did. I made a couple of trips, you know, like before.
Now let's not rule out an important part of both our lives here, which is that we both stayed at the Methodist International House, which was the crazy youth hostel in the middle of King's Cross, which was just, it was brilliant. I mean, it was great when you know, for being smack bang in the middle of London, trying to get access to, like you said, like all these places to go for interviews and things. And my work was only in Oxford Circus, so I could walk to work, you know, so it was brilliant. But the place we lived in was totally crazy. Like there was some.
I remember going there. I can't remember whether I'd started work or I was doing what I just said, like just looking for work when we stayed there. But I do remember, like, us both being in there. I think you might have already started work. And
yeah, because I got a job from my placement, more or less. They basically said, as soon as you finish, come and see us. And I remember we'd all gone down to the New Designers exhibition. We had some work there. And then I went for a kind of a catch up with the company, which was called Beresford's then. And and literally they just said, yeah, when can you start? And I said Monday, and they were like, great. And then that was it. And I was sort of off flying, really. But I mean, they paid me absolutely jack all. I just wanted to, but it was great because I had a design job in London. I just wanted to get on with it, you know. And I think for all of us, when you first start that first job, it's not, you understand that you're not going to get paid much. You know, you understand that
it was difficult. I remember, like, when I did, you're not getting, you're getting enough to get by, but it was like you had to manage yourself, like, you know,
just enough to pay the Methodists.
You
know, but just enough. But they were very good, actually, because they let us stay there. Even we weren't really meant to stay there, but they let us stay there on like a student rate, even though we weren't. Yeah, because they basically said, you know, to give us a sort of a start in life, a little leg up, that they would help us for 3 months, and then after that we were gone. And I remember there was a deadline looming of us having to leave that place, which was a tragedy because it was ridiculous. We were in the middle of King's Cross. It was like the whole 3 months we stayed there was only 500 quid, and that included breakfast, dinner, and an evening meal every day. Which is just insane.
We were like, it was literally like right next to Euston Station, wasn't it? It was like really. So for that price, it was.
Well, I can remember like one of the, sometimes I'd be working late and I would ring up the Methodist House and say, I'm going to be late, aka I'm going out for the night, and they would save my dinner. They would put it in the microwave. And then they would give me the access number for the kitchen, and I would go back at like 3 a.m. or whatever, put the access code in, go in the kitchen, microwave my dinner, and then take it to bed. And they would do that like all the time. It was brilliant. It was like the best place. But
so you stayed there before you went.
I was there for 3 months. I was there from June to sort of September, so a bit longer. But and it was a good place. Yeah, and then we got the because I'd already arranged to get a place with John and Robin and Paul. I can remember because I don't think you were in around London at the time that we started looking for flats.
I hadn't, like, you know, well, I did get my job, but I mean, basically, the one cut where my first job was at a company called a brand agency called Springett's, and
that was a good company. That's a good company.
They were. at the time they used to take on graduates. I think at one time they were only taking on graduates and training them up. I don't know whether that's the policy now. I think that changed, but so they offered me a place there, and yeah, I mean that was Baker Street. Their office then was Baker Street, so it wasn't that far away from you.
Yeah, right.
And
you invited me to a couple of the Springits Christmas parties, actually, of which I've got very fond memories of getting very drunk. And there was a casino one year where we did lots of gambling and stuff. That was
It was quite a big. I think they had about 30 people in there, so it was like sizable, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
But it was bigger than that, wasn't it? Because like in your team was probably that many. But I thought because I can remember the parties being quite. Like there being several hundred people there.
Turned up to those.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe it's all the friends and family. But you had a different experience in that respect to me, because the place where I worked was relatively small group of people. I've never experienced working in it other than freelancing. Working in a big agency environment like that. So
that was the biggest stuff to be like. Well, yeah, but I've perhaps done something similar to that, but never bigger than that. I mean, I know we had like Brett, who worked at, you know, he got a job at Saatchi and Saatchi.
That's right. Yeah, he was in the ad part, wasn't he? Yeah.
People in there, and they had their own bar in the centre of Saatchi.
Yeah, that's right. And I can't. The pregnant man. That is. Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, he left there, but I think from conversation. I mean, I haven't spoken to him for a long time either. But from conversations I'd have with him, were the whole kind of mass culture was a bit of a sort of scary environment to work in, just the volume of people and the level of competition and the cutthroat sort of backstabbing that goes on between creative teams and things.
So I mean, with Spring it's been 30. I mean, we still. I mean, and like I said, a lot of people have started from being students as well. So you've got people that had worked there since like the beginning of forming of the company, like you know. And I think it was formed in like maybe if not mid 80s, earlier. I don't know. Like I think it was quite established even when I was there. It was like a known brand packaging agency.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think for a time they were, it was like one of the most top 10 of the packaging agencies based.
Yeah, I remember. So it was probably
on it really. It was like it was a good opportunity. I felt. And they weren't. When I was there, they weren't just doing packaging. It was like branding as well, like corporate, a bit like sports branding as well.
Yeah. But that's good, and
I realised we jumped a question.
No, don't worry about that. They're not in any particular order. I don't sort of count them off. I just sort of because inevitably things flow into other things, and I'd rather just talk about it than keep stopping and going. No, we haven't done question 4 yet. But I can remember you getting your job there, and I think out of everybody that I knew. That was getting work down in London. Aside from Brett, who was at Saatchi's, but he did a placement there for so long before they even gave him a job. Like, you were the first person I remember getting a decent job in a well-known company. I don't remember many other people. I mean, even though I started at Beresford's wasn't as well-known as Springits was at the time. And, and the same, so you probably had, while it took you longer to get that job, and yet you inevitably doorstepped however many hundreds of companies, it was worth waiting and persevering because you ended up somewhere really good, and they taught you a lot of stuff. And
I mean, it was cool. I mean, and the creative director there, and it was like I said, because they took on students, it was like they knew, it was like, and there were others of us there starting together, and so it was like. It's quite a good environment to start out in, really, because that was the way they were operating. That's sort of in mind. They're taking students on, I mean, it was. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's quite hard though. You still had to, prove yourself there. Whilst I was there was other people who didn't make it. They didn't have probation, and they felt they were.
Was that because you sabotaged their work? Just sort of walk by and not.
On a few times.
I can imagine you just walking by and knocking a paint pot over their work and going, whoops.
Yeah.
Survival of the
There
fittest,
was a
mate.
bit of competition in it, but but
Yeah.
it wasn't. But you had they sort of gave you your 3 months,
To prove yourself. Well, they obviously liked you because you were there for what, like 2 years, 3 years?
4 years altogether.
Were you?
But,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, I thought you moved before then. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, and so I think it's all thinking remembering it all now. So,
Yeah. You've spent years trying to block it all out. This is the therapy session you just don't need, like we're recalling all of that. But all the time that you were down in London, and we like I said, we eventually ended up living together anyway, but we were going out and about, and we were working in with professional designers and that, but we were also all our friends were all merging into this one massive group of people that were all doing art and design and photography, and it was a really exciting time because like one of our friends, Steve Brown, was like doing animation just around the corner, and so it had all these different like connections at that time, and we used to spend a lot of time together, and it was a brilliant time.
I remember that. There was like at times there was like quite a crowd of people going out together, wasn't there? Like
we'd go out some nights and there'd be like 30 of us, it'd be like just this massive group, and what was great about that is if we were going out around Oxford Circus, we had like this weird little home base, and anyone that's listening now, it doesn't matter because Beresford's is gone, but the second day I was at Beresford's, they basically, because I lived relatively close, we were in Archway, but I lived relatively close to the central London, which a lot of people didn't. They all lived out in the sticks. I got like a sort of a responder key, they used to call it, or something like that. It was like responder key, where you had like keys for the whole office and all of the passwords. So if anything was to happen, and I would like hop on a bus or get a taxi or whatever, and go into town and disable the alarms and make sure everything was all right. But which was never a problem. But the flip side of that is that I had the keys to a central London office over the weekend. So, like, not that we ever went and caused a ruckus, but it was brilliant for having a place, a sort of central base. We'd all sort of sometimes meet up there first before going out and stuff. And it was brilliant,
Yeah, I remember your office, because, where I was in Baker Street, you had pubs and that there, but you were just a little bit, I had to get on a bus to come down to get right. But you came out of your office and you were right
next door to the Palladium. Yeah. So it was just like, it was insane, but, and also a brilliant first, in fact, all of that, Baker Street and like Oxford Circus and then like Old Street and all those, they're all brilliant places to work when you're a designer, because you go to the pub and there's just loads of creatives in there from all other agencies. Like Stuart, who I used to work with, who very well, he knew loads of other people from different companies that he introduced me to, and that I'm still friends with now. And and it's you start building your relationships with people through that, other than your work channels, through your social life as well. So yeah, it was a good time.
I remember being a lot of partying and. A few hangovers. A lot of hangovers.
Yeah, but it was good though. It was good, and we had a good group of friends. All of them now. Not many of them live in London. I think most people have sort of moved out and done the family thing and all that sort of stuff, like people do. But I'm the last one hanging in there. I'm still Zone 5. I think Stu's Zone 2. But yeah, there's a lot of people have sort of moved away in that now. So and it's good when we do hook up again, but not that hardly ever happens. So you being in Thailand, no, you're not missing out. The only time I saw everyone really was when John Beecher got married and we had his stag do. And that was quite good because I caught up with a lot of people then. But other than that, I don't really see anybody. It's other than the kind of the mummies dropping their kids off at school. I don't see anyone else. So that's just the way it goes. But so
we did so much, didn't we? So you can't keep doing that. So
no, I got out quite early. I left at a good time. I think I got out quite early. I was like, I've got to start saving some money, and I can't keep stepping out of the front of the office and just going to all these bars because you know, you don't. It's not like an indefinite amount of cash, unfortunately. But you know, but you're right. You've got to keep a lid on that. So yeah, so then you moved from Springett, you moved down to Wandsworth. Is that when you got your job down there?
Right. Yeah, I mean, like,
because we were living in Clapham. No, I moved to Clapham, and then you came and lived with me down there for a little bit, and then we moved to just up the road from Lavender Hill, didn't we? We had a place up there.
We lived in a couple of places in Clapham, and then Wandsworth.
I mean,
I left Springett, like I said, for like 4 years there. It was my first job, and I felt like I could have stayed, like, but and I also wanted to try the things that by the time I was finishing there, it was they had, like I said, they did do sports branding and that, and they did do corporate work, but that was tailing off a bit, and I was being more and more into just focusing just solely on like brand packaging. So I kind of felt I didn't want to, like, because I mean, some designers just like, they just specialize solely on doing brand packaging. I wanted to do something like more different types of things. I didn't want to just focus on that. And then my first job after 4 years as well, I just got like itchy feet, you know, and just thought I need to try.
Yeah, I need to try something else. Yeah, I mean, that was the same with me at Beresford's. I was there for just over 4 years, and I really enjoyed working there, and I loved all the people that I was working with. But it was a similar thing. I was doing a lot of like corporate design and things, and I wanted to try some more fashion-based things and do it, you know. So when I left there, I felt like that I left at the right time, you know, and like you said, you know, if you'd have stayed at Springett's for a while longer, your folio would have just been full of packaging. So that makes it harder for you to get into other design companies that diversify away from it.
Yeah, I didn't want to sort of, I mean, I didn't want to like just focus on that, like you're saying. So I started trying to look for like other companies, but like I found it quite difficult because like people say, okay, you're from Springett's, and that's brand packaging agency, so they sort of already pigeonholed me by like
sure.
I did find moving on quite tough,
like
putting together a portfolio, and I wanted to get out there and get into like sort of print agencies and try the things.
But you were still young enough that I think people would think that they could still mold you into something else if they wanted to. You know what I mean? Like if you were doing it now, hadn't been at Springett's for 20 years, you'd find it much harder to do that. Whereas when you're in your early 20s doing that, people sort of look at your experience and they still understand that you've still got some learning to do at that stage, I think. So they're probably open to sort of looking at your work more objectively if they do more corporate design, for example, you know.
I didn't like I wasn't sure then about just doing freelance, and like, you know, so you said some people like do go in freelancing, but I definitely wanted to get another full-time position at the time, and I had to, you know, I went to like employment agencies, like, you know, like sort of London-based like design employment recruitment agencies, did all that and sent me out, and that was how I got the second job. Like I said, South London, a company called Vario, which then went on to become David Jones Design, and they were all like I'm trying to think, ex-Light and Coley, so like, you know, they'd been in big agency but then broke away to set up.
So this was a smaller team, wasn't it? Was there like sort of 6 or 7 of you?
Yeah, but similar, they'd bring people in, so you'd have like freelancers that come in. You knew them, like, you know, they'd do like long periods there, and then, you know, sometimes if it was quiet, they weren't there. But yeah, it was a really laddish company. It was like mainly just guys in there in the time, and but so yeah, it's totally different. Yeah, totally different experience. Like working in Springett's with like 30, 40 people, like down to like an agency like that. And
because you started doing a lot of web design and stuff then, didn't you?
Yeah,
I remember.
It gives you like I said, they were doing packaging as well, so it was sort of like how they could see I'd got some other work, and but I had the packaging background as well, so that's what they wanted. So
yeah,
that's how I got that, really.
yeah.
Um,
But then
yeah, I mean,
that's your kind of foot in the door that then allows you to move on those other projects if when you get the opportunity, don't they?
yeah, and they did give me like there's quite a variety of jobs there, and being smaller a company as well, you had more responsibility with things as well, like there. So
Yeah.
taking on.
Yeah, and it was it's the same for me at Beresford. It's like, from a very early start, because there wasn't a great deal of us. I just got thrown in the deep end with lots of projects, because with there, the smaller teams mean you have to take on that responsibility earlier. That you can't be groomed for years and then end up doing that. You kind of just get sort of chucked in the deep end, and which is half the fun of it. Sort of working it out yourself, and
I mean, they did give me jobs to do, but a lot of it was team based. If you're doing big branding jobs, it was team based. But then you would get the odd sort of sole project you're working on by yourself.
Yeah.
But obviously with Vario, it was a lot more of that. Like maybe we did do teamwork, but most of the time it was like you're assigned you to concentrate on this. Like,
yeah, and you were there for a while, and then and then you went to Thailand.
Yeah.
And you've been in Thailand now for like 13, do we say 13 years? Oh my God, Ian.
Yeah, 13 plus, yeah.
That's insane, mate. That's absolutely insane. And I know we'd always both talked about working abroad. I always thought that maybe I'd get to do it at some point, but then you never really know how that's going to sort of plan out. And I did get to work abroad for a little while, but I only did it was like 5 or 6 months, whereas like you're the longest serving expat that I know. In my time working abroad, I really enjoyed it, and it was really good fun. And it was really hard work working in a country where the first language isn't your native language. So how's your Thai going?
I'm okay. Yeah, okay.
I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to ask you to reel any off. And to be honest, you could have said anything, and I believe you, because I'm terrible at languages. But I once had to typeset like this massive report in Khmer, which have like 51 word sentences. It's just like insane amount of work. So anyone that can survive abroad working with dual languages and stuff, I've got big respect for. So I think you've done really well out there. So when you went out there, were you freelancing for a while then before you got full time?
So I mean, I didn't the way it happened. I didn't I'd been out here traveling with friends and that, and I'd come back and initially tried to I Singapore was where I sort of focused on initially, because like you say, the language thing, it's an English speaking company. There's lots of there are quite a lot of there are still quite a lot of design companies there, but even back then, you had English companies like Design Bridge had an office out in Singapore, and names you're familiar with like Interbrand.
Did you work for Interbrand for a while?
That. So that's where I focused on initially.
Didn't you? You did freelance with them, didn't you?
I didn't work freelance. I knew the guy who worked at Interbrand, who's funnily enough, when I was in Singapore, I met on an interview, and I'm now working for in Thailand.
Oh, okay, okay.
Went on. But I worked. There was I worked at in independent companies in Singapore rather than the big sort of international companies out there. And I think the thing I found with it was you had to be there, and it was I'd gone out on holiday, and I was like, I want to try and come out and travel and work abroad in Asia, but whilst on holiday, I'd been in Singapore and shown my portfolio around, but it's not until you were feet on the ground, saying, right, I'm here, I'm unavailable. So I made the decision that's what I had to do. I left Vario, and I just came out to Asia I didn't have anything really concrete lined up.
Like you say, in that scenario, they'll look at your work and be like, when can we use you? And if you're like, well, I don't live out here yet, then they're like, well, give us a call when you come out, you know, rather than, oh, we'll set you up and then come out, you know. So it doesn't quite work that way, does it? But like you said, as soon as you get out there and start telling people you're available, then I guess the work starts coming up, you know.
So I mean, I was there for a while, and it's a good introduction to Singapore, because it's like, you know, it's a nice, it's very like, you know, sort of, it's not like Thailand, like, you know, it's completely, it's like a good way, an introduction into work into Asia, really, when you start there. And it was, you know, the companies, they felt familiar, you know, the people you're working with as well, like the owners, like, they were like British designers as well, who'd done the same thing, and so
sure,
you were trying to do.
Yeah, so they could give you some advice on the pitfalls and things like that, and yeah,
they'd worked in London and that, and set up in Singapore, so it was a good introduction to, like, you know, sort of coming out to Asia and that. But at the same time, like, I'd also been looking for like work in Bangkok as well, like, and I got an offer from somebody in Bangkok, and then I basically went and took that up.
So I guess because when you're freelancing, you're on a limited visa, right? So you're only out there for, do you only get 12 months? Do you? I know it's like in the UK.
And it was like, I mean, I could have, like, it was, they, you know, you were getting like to offers of like full time and that, and take it, you know. So but I decided I got this other offer, and I took it up in Bangkok.
Yeah.
So,
and that enabled you to stay for longer than the sort of obligatory 12 months visa.
Yeah, you had to. I mean, I did the same, like Thailand, like in Bangkok. I showed my portfolio around there again, and you know, with hitting Thailand, you have to have the work. You know, you need the work permit to get the job here. So there's a challenge in getting the job here. You know, because you're a foreigner, and it's like not all companies are prepared to do that. So
sure.
But it was easier back then. Like it's sort of like, it was 13 years ago. The rules have changed quite a bit since when I started. I was doing it back then. It was like perhaps a bit easier, but so I got that offer in Bangkok, and so I sort of left Singapore and came up here, like, to do that, really. Trying to think, sounds like, so and that was quite a different. It's like, I mean, here you do have to get used to the culture, like, you know, sort of like there's different office culture as well, because it is like a very Asian culture as opposed, you know, so that's what I was used to. Sort of
and what about the work? Are you primarily doing work in English or dual languages, or in Thai, or, you know, or is it a mix?
Primarily English. Like that first company I started at was they specialised in like travel tourism based, so they were like focused a lot on like serving like sort of expat clients and like hotels and travel so there's a lot of that there. So it wasn't I mean, you know, we had Thai designers who do the Thai sort of if it was required. Most, when I was at that first job, it was, I didn't speak Thai much back then, and they took me on just to do the English work, really. So,
well, that's good, that's a possibility, isn't it? Because, you know, it's if that's something that they needed, especially I guess with the tourism side of things, promoting it to English speaking market, you know, you sort of got, it's good that you could do that without having to worry about being fluent in another language before you started, you know.
I mean, I did like, when I did sort of get lessons in Thai and that, and got a teacher, and sort of, I even like, because I was, you know, I felt like I wanted to like, I wanted to read it as well, not just speak it, you know, because you're working with typography and that. You want that, you know, you see some signage, and but also you get lost as well.
But like I was saying about that Khmer job, like when I was typesetting that, you had to be so careful where you break the words, you know, because you break a word in the wrong place, it means something entirely different. So it's not like England where, you know, it just kind of like the word carries over and you just read it as a connecting word, you know, like when you're flowing those multiple languages, it's, you know, you can be saying the worst possible thing at the end of a sentence, you know. I mean, you don't want to break country in the wrong place. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't look good. So, you know, it's an interesting one. But yeah, I mean, that's and also you need to, you know, having your lessons and everything, you need to know how to say CMYK in Thailand, don't you? So Thai. So I guess all that terminology.
It's a good way as well, like of when you know, I got the teacher, and it's a good introduction. Like you learn, it's a good way to sort of ingrain yourself in the culture as well. If you learn the language as well, it's a good way to learn about that. And
keep you busy. A bit of light reading on the train. So then did you? So you've since moved to another company since you've been there. That was the first one, and then you since moved.
Yeah, I mean, I stayed at like that first company for about 9 years, but like the owner retired and it sort of moved on, and I felt I had to move on. Like, I mean, I did stay there quite a long time, but like I was saying, it's not like in the UK where you might jump around between jobs, because out here you're a foreigner and you've got that work permit, and it's like the jobs aren't for foreigners.
No, of course, and also you're lucky to get yourself in a situation where that's the case, so you wouldn't want to jeopardize that, you know. And I know freelancers that have been out there that have done, you know, that have tried to do that, tried to jump from job to job, and inevitably they end up having to come back because they're, you know, because of that exact reason, which is that they didn't stick it out at one job for long enough to kind of, you know, they've taken that London mentality of hopping from flower to flower, and it, you know, it's much harder to do that out there, isn't it? But then, you know, to stay, but then if you think about what you got out of that for 9 years, is it enabled you to stay in Thailand, it enabled you to, you know, to be in that part of the world and experience a whole different culture. And you know, it must have been quite exciting, because I mean, I don't know about you, but the street food on Croydon is pretty bad. So I imagine like the street food in Thailand is much, you know, that whole sort of culture of the night markets and stuff must just be.
I mean, there were testing times there, like, you know, like Thailand's in, you know, when it had some troubles and that. I know I can remember, like I was saying before, like having to work from home, like, you know, floods in Bangkok, or you had
and was there a military coup at one point not that long ago?
Yeah, there was. I had to walk past a few tanks. A couple of times. Well, when that was going on, like
well, that's not so dissimilar to Croydon. You know, armed guards everywhere, and you know, what have you. But yeah, I think I mean, that's just, you know, it's just what happens in there. It just sort of pops up like that every now and again. There's always something going on. But
I think that's been the thing here with that as well. You sort of got used to like adapting to that as well. Like, you know, you sort of anything could happen, sort of thing. You know, so you sort of like,
Sure. Well, I guess because of that, you know, having the security of being in, you know, almost having your decision made for you really to stay where you are as long as you can until something solid comes up on the horizon, rather than just chancing it. You know, it does give you some security in that respect, in that you know that you can, I mean, as long as you keep the bosses happy, then, you know.
It's quite a small company, that place as well. It wasn't like a huge, massive company. So again, it was like, you know, you're responsible for, you know, jobs by yourself and things.
Yeah, that's good. And you're enjoying it then? You're liking it where you are at the moment? I mean, obviously, if your boss is listening to this.
So I left that first company after 9 years, and the guy I was telling before, who worked for Interbrand in Singapore, had a company here that been running. He'd set up here, and I knew him as a friend, and he offered me a job with his company. So brand new day. So I've been there getting on like 3 years now.
That's cool.
3-4 years now.
That's good. And you've lived in a few different apartments and homes since you've been over there.
Yeah, I moved around a bit. I've not moved. I've always been central Bangkok. I've not like moved out, like, you know,
Yeah.
sort of like outside the
Well, mate,
city.
you know, if you've lived with me, then you can survive any military coup or earthquakes that might happen. So, you know, I think I prepared you well for living abroad. I can remember, like, we used to live in a house on in Clapham together, and there used to be it had upstairs, downstairs, and I remember there used to be these little sort of bits in the wall where there were sort of pillars, but there were places I could hide. And I would get up in the morning and I'd hear you coming down the stairs and I'd hide in these things, and then you'd come out and I'd jump out at you. And I remember I'd wake up in the morning and that's the first thing I'd think of, and it would just fill me with sheer delight knowing that I was going to attempt to terrify you. No, you did the best thing you did was move to Thailand to get away from your weird stalker housemate. So I think we're kind of getting to a point where we're going to talk about.
Sorry, where are we?
No, we're good. We're sort of number 6. We've hit. We're at that 6-7 point, which is, you want to talk about a piece of work that you've done that didn't go well,
Right.
something you might like to go back to or not. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this. Like, it's quite like, yeah, to sort of. I mean, there's jobs like you do when you start out, and you obviously look back on them now and you think perhaps they're not the best they could have been, and layout, typography, things like that could have. Yeah. I think you're always doing that. Sometimes you're always trying to constantly improve as well. There's always going to be things where you sort of like you look at. But I think I had one that stands out as being quite unpleasant. And it wasn't wasn't so much a design job. It was like I'd say it was like a production job. And I don't know, like with when I first started, like in Bangkok, we had this client. He's a good client and gave us a lot of work. And as like I said, we were a small company, but we sometimes have to work directly with the CEO of this company. Like I said, it was quite a successful company, and they were like in the offices around Asia, and that's it. It wasn't like it's quite a sizable company. Yeah. And so this guy, he was the CEO would sometimes ask us to do work directly for him. He'd have a presentation or something he's trying to put together, and he'd come in and like he knew like our boss as well, and so he'd come in and want to work directly with us on projects. This guy, he's a demanding guy, quite a tough guy, and like he loved tightening the screw, I suppose it was, like sort of like I set them a deadline, and it's like everything was like short deadlines, there's pressure, and he sort of operated in that mode. It's like he liked giving people the pressure that he felt to get the job done. So
yeah, okay.
Like I say, he's not the easiest guy to work with, but like one time he comes in, like he arranges with us to he wants to come in and sit directly with me as a designer and put together this like presentation. Right. And I got a bit of trepidation about it at the start, because I was a bit nervous of him anyway, because he was like I said, not the easiest guy to work with. And I'm like saying to my boss, what does he want to do? Like, and he's like, it's just a few text changes in this presentation, it's easy. He's just going to come and sit in on the afternoon and do it.
Yeah, because everyone loves that. Like literally, I've got to the point now where I won't even talk to people over the phone about amends. I have to email me. I can't sit with anyone. I can't unless it's a close family member and we're doing some fun thing. I hate doing amends over the phone. Like next page, 7th line, blah blah blah. It's like just send them. It's just it's such an uncomfortable, unnatural feeling. I
don't think many people would they, having somebody sat on your shoulder like when you're doing something. So like I said, I was nervous about it anyway, and I was like, what does he want? Yeah. Suspect. What's he gonna and like so, but he comes in, and when he comes in the office straight away, he's like, he's in a bad mood already.
Oh no.
So he sat next to me, like, and he's got dozens and dozens of these changes in this like PowerPoint presentation he wants to do, and it's not like just a few like text changes here and there. It's like reorganizing the whole thing, and it's like
right.
he wants it doing in the afternoon. I'm like, you know,
yeah.
I was sort of like I said, he's the CEO of this company, and I think looking back on it now, I should have just said there and then, this is too much, like, you know, but for some reason,
but you don't. You just kind of, in those scenarios, you just don't. You're just like, well, we'll just get it done, and you know, or attempt to get it done.
So, sat down to it, and straight away, sort of like, you know, I'm trying to work through it, trying to get your head around this thing. Like you say, you need like, especially PowerPoint as well, which isn't like, I don't find the most like, you know.
No, I don't like any Microsoft products. Like it just, I don't really like working in them.
And he's there going, you know, why are you doing it like that? Why is this taking so long? I only want to do this. Why do you have to go back and do that? You know, and it's sort of like, oh God, this is a nightmare. You know, sort of like, it's really difficult as well. Like, you know, you're trying to handle this. Like, you know, somebody's obviously really annoyed about something anyway, and they're sat next to you and they're just in a bad mood.
And you become a bit of a punching bag then, don't you, I guess?
And it goes on and on and on. And I just like have to say to him, like, yeah, I'm sorry, this is just, I'm going to have to like say, I'll carry on working on this like into the night. I'll just sit here like and get it till it's done, you know, like just give me the changes. And this guy explodes. Like, he's like, I've organised this afternoon, and why are you telling me now that it's going to take you all evening? I haven't got time to wait until all night for your email to come in. He's like shouting in the office. You can see all the people in the office, you know, looking at me like, oh, glad it's not me.
Yeah.
And he's like banging the desk and that. And it just ends basically with this guy, like, you know, he's going so annoyed, like, you know, calling us like liars, or we can't use PowerPoint and all that. And like, I'm like reminding him, like, yeah, we did the branding for your company. We actually like created the PowerPoint. It's really difficult, you know, because in that sort of situation, it's like, I think it's the closest I've ever like really nearly told somebody, you know, last take you know, because he was really going at me, like, you know. But, you know, it ends in, like, like, literally, he's, like, banging the desk, slammed the door in the office, and then, like, 10 minutes later, he's on the phone to my boss, like, bawling him down the phone, saying, guy's useless.
It's so unprofessional, though. Like, it's so unprofessional, like, of him to be like that. I mean, firstly, like, it's such an old-fashioned way of sitting next to the client and making design changes anyway. And, you know, if there's more to do, it's harder for you to say to him face to face, this is going to take longer, you know. And then when you do, the response you get is that it's like, it's so unprofessional on his part on all levels. Do you know what I mean? So
there must have been something else going on, because it's not just about the PowerPoint, but like, you know, it's like,
he didn't try to touch your knee or anything, did he? And you were like, I'm not that kind of girl, you know. But I'm sure that's So if you could do anything different, what would you do? Just like hit him with the monitor?
It's not really like you say. It's not when it's such a heat in the moment thing like that. You think, you know, people talk about like managing client expectations. Like, I suppose I should have put my foot down at the start when I was a bit nervous about it and said, right, you should send them first and see what we're doing. But like, so we were only a smallish company, and it's like we didn't, you know, this was like fairly good client for us, and we didn't want to like
you don't want to upset him, but then equally if they're being unreasonable in that way, then there's no real excuse whether they're a good client or a crap one. You know, it's like they should have a little bit more understanding of something like that taking longer. And also, when you're in that situation, you don't want to upset them. You want to do your best to do the best you can, but at least you said, this is going to take longer, you know, regardless of whether he lost his top or not. You know, it's hard keeping him happy.
He did, like, eventually. I mean, after it all, I don't know, but I think my boss told me like something like he'd spoke to him and he'd actually gone off and done it in-house and like realised he didn't understand how much work he was asking for, how
Yeah.
much was involved.
And
like, he said, oh, this other guy, it took him like 2 days or something to turn this
around. Sure. Yeah. And it's okay feeling sorry about it then, but like, I guess maybe next time he'll have a better idea, or maybe not, who knows. But yeah.
That was about the worst for me, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had like, where you've had meetings where things, like somebody doesn't like something, but nothing, explosive like that.
No. Well, that's yeah, but that's just managing client expectation, or not, because sometimes you can't. Sometimes you get clients that are just, I do some interesting projects with people, and some of the people, when the jobs come in, I think, oh God, I hate working with this person, but I like the work. So, you kind of have to just sort of put up with it, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is part of it. Yeah, it's sort of managing that. And also, people can be so unpredictable. So the way that you handle and speak to one client and your relationship with them is so different from the next person that, like, switching from one to another, especially when they're the disagreeable kind, it's tricky to manage that, So that leads us into the next one, which is let's talk about a piece of work that you're proud of.
Right. Well,
or more than one. I'm assuming there's just one, which is the completed PowerPoint from that meeting. You finished it anyway, never sent it to him, and it's fucking amazing.
But, it was, I suppose, like, for the most, like, I suppose one of the most prestigious, like, design thing, it was a piece of work I did with the team at Vario, David Jones Design. And we actually got nominated for like a Design Week award, and it was it's packaging, but it was like pharmaceutical packaging. So like you're doing a whole system of packs, like hundreds of packs. It was a really big project for us. The whole team were involved on it. But just the fact that we got to go to like the awards night, and we were only the smallest team, and you get to go and go with like the Lewis Mobiles and Coley Porterbells. We didn't we were only getting a nomination. We didn't win an award, but it's still cool to be even nominated.
Oh yeah, that is very cool. And it's funny because I meant to say to you earlier, because you're also one of the only people that I know that's ever won a D&AD award.
Okay,
because there aren't many people that have won one, and you and Sean Pereira at uni, you won an award for, was it the second year or third year? Yeah, that's right. Did you get silver? You got silver?
Yeah, silver. Just and they were like, it's like half pencil as well, and it's like, see my mom. I think my mom said she'd still got it in her cabinet at home.
She tells everyone it's hers. Oh, that's something I won years ago. Yeah, but I remember that was a really good thing to be proud of, because they're not easy to get, especially when you're a student, and as open-minded as the judges are about student work, it's still highly competitive. So that's
so I mean that was the only other one I'd ever, like, awards thing I'd ever been to. And,
I've not even
expensive, like, as well to enter. So
I
don't think they're like every company.
No, they don't. I mean, I did. I've been to a couple of awards things, but nothing of any kind of in any way. And the closest I got was a thing I did for BA a couple of years ago, where I put it forward, and it didn't get nominated, but I got loads of feedback from like the judges, because it was in like a category where there were like some serious hard hitters like Ogilvy and all these massive companies that ended up in the nominations and ultimately winning it. But I got loads of really good feedback from it, and I got lots of people contacting me about getting involved with D&AD and et cetera for like small businesses. I just don't think they like the idea, and plus the ideas weren't as good as the ones that won, but I don't think they also like the idea that they could, this guy's just one bloke in his bedroom ultimately, so we can't, we can't make a big song and dance about that. But
really cool you got that. Like,
yeah, so I got invited to. I took Stu along to like this D&AD night where we got invited to the Groucho Club and had drinks and stuff like that. And there were a couple of other people that I spoke to there that also hadn't been nominated, but because you have to get in like the top 5, and someone I'd spoke to since then said that that I came close, but I didn't get in the top 5. So that for me is enough. I'm like, I'm good. My days of entering awards and stuff are over. I just think like I just accept the fact of how competitive it is, and there's so much good work out there that win those things, deservedly so. That not to say that you ever give up hope, but it's an expensive hobby to keep, to keep getting in there.
I don't know what I don't know what the guys paid, but yeah, I mean, I've met like people who they don't do it because of that. They like, it's not something we really want to, like I said, invest in. So year on year,
sure.
That. So, whereas some people do, like,
Yeah,
I
but then
when I left, like they had, when I looked at their website, they'd won lots of Design Week awards, like Sunside. Like, the years after I just
the minute you left, they started winning loads of design awards.
they seem to have really gone into that. They do it every year, and change. They sort of focus towards.
Well, I think that's it does. But then in a way, you're. There's part of you that's then designing for designers when maybe it's not necessary to be doing that.
There is. Like Stu was saying that, like, I mean, there's different types of awards, isn't there? Like design effectiveness.
Yeah, but I think with all of those new awards coming in, or say not new, but like it's certainly being a lot more of them now, I feel like that does dilute things slightly. And the D&AD today doesn't feel like it did when we were at college 20 years ago. Because like 20 years ago, it was like the holy grail was one day to think that might be a thing. Whereas now, not to take anything away from D&AD, because they have amazing work, I do feel it feels a little bit more like industry for industry patting each other on the back, rather than this kind of open creative. Maybe I'm just bitter, obviously, but
I don't know, but I suppose as well with the designs changed, isn't it? I mean, they D&AD stuff like categories. Now you have so many different things.
It used to be like, here's 5 things, where do you fall? Now you look at the entry list, and there's like each category has subcategories that has subcategories, and and the thing you're doing probably crosses over into 2 or 3 of those. So you may end up paying 4 or 5 times to enter that one year. So. Yeah, but who knows? I do. It's worth doing it if you feel like you've got a piece of work that could go forward. But then I guess it's just a personal goal rather than a sort of, if it's on your shelf. Does anyone care? Any of your clients care that you've got one of those? It's sort of more for yourself, isn't it? But So
I think that was like an area that was like they'd got that, like, it was like they could see it as like something we'd done that was like suited to that, like, they wanted it. Like,
but even just getting to go like that and be involved, like you said, it's a buzz to go to those awards things, and there's a chance you might win, but it doesn't matter if you don't, because you've got to go and get involved with the whole event. So I think that's cool. That's cool. So
I mean, apart from, like, I don't know, you were saying other things. I mean, in Thailand out here, like, I've done like, you do like nice resort location shoots and things like that. They've been quite nice. You get to see, like.
Well, you might, mate. You might get to go to nice resorts and beach parties and all that stuff. But
before, it was not now. But, back then when I was doing that, it was cool to do that as well. It's a good way to get around and see the place as well.
Yeah, sure. Must be tough living in a
We're doing photo shoots in.
Yeah, it's a tough life to have gorgeous weather all the time. I know, you being from the Warsaw area, you're used to kind of a more sort of rainy, smog sort of environment. So I guess you come back occasionally and get your fix, but then it's back to getting your tan on. So I mean, we've kind of talked about what you're doing now, but what do you see yourself going next? I guess, like we were saying about staying in your current role is sort of part of working abroad, is maintaining that.
So I'm at the company called Brand New Day now, and like I said, I've been here for like, you know, going on 4 years. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, I really enjoy it here, and it's, you know, you do got some nice clients. There's a lot of packaging still involved in it as well. So it's like branding packaging.
Yeah.
So we have like, you know, Nestle, Singer, Amex, things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, with the things at the moment as well, it's just like taking things day by day, really.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no point in thinking about rocking the boat just yet. I mean, like, you know, just from personal experience, I mean, my work kind of goes from being super busy one day to literally nothing the next day, and like, you know, it is completely crazy how it sort of ebbs and flows like that. But you know, I think that's all just responding to the sort of the pandemic and clients being careful with their budgets and people being furloughed and all that stuff. I think until that changes, you know, it's hard to make any plans for the future. But you know, maybe one day you'll come back to the UK and you can live with me again. There's always a room for you, Ian. There's always a room for you and the family. You can always come and stay.
I don't know, mate. Yeah, I mean, even before like, you know, the code and that, is quite hard for guys like me to do that. You know, when you get in reverse, you've got, you know, so you've got to come back with the UK anyway. You've got to have the job lined up first and have been in that job for like 6 months, and then before you apply for a visa and all that. So it makes it very tough for like expats like me to
return.
And in this situation, I think like must be people like me very nervous, like, you know, if they're you know, with family abroad and they don't know what's going to happen with work, and if they have to come back to the UK and not it's a bit tough on people, I think.
I guess it's a constant possibility that sort of pops up and, you know, becomes an issue. But at the same time, you can't live your life checking the news every day. You gotta try and enjoy it at the same time, haven't you? So I guess if it happens, it happens, and then you just deal with it, you know. But yeah, I know that you know, myself included, we do miss you over here. But at the same time, you know,
But like then again, I mean, it's been such a while since they're like, my memories of being there, mate. Are like you said, when we were all going out and like, you know, when you hadn't, you know, you weren't married when I left. I don't think so. I don't suppose if I came back, you know, none of us.
It's a different, it is a different. You know, I mean, the thing is, you know, the kind of the family rule around here is that, you know, if you don't live within half a mile, I'm unlikely to see you for like years anyway. So whether you're in, I mean, you could just as easily be in Warsaw now, and it would, you know, we probably would have seen each other less. So you know what it's like we're saying, routine and all that stuff. But yeah, it's good to see you anyway. So I guess, you know, moving on to the next question, which is, do you have any advice for anyone starting in the industry, and maybe something you would have liked to know before you started, to have known before you started?
Well, I think I'd echo what like the guys before it saying, like, you know, like John and Stu were saying, like, you know, like they focus, like the focus is on the concept first, like John's saying. I mean, we've been working with a couple of interns. Like we do take on interns, like, you know, and we've had a couple of people in, and like they're literally just like starting out, like the very, you know, back me when I was like, you know, at the beginning. And I think the advice is I'd say like keep your drawing skills up. Like, you know, you've had, you know, people look at like graphic design, like, it is Adobe, you know, it is, you know, people, I think there's a tendency for people to look at the graphic design, just think, Adobe Photoshop, you know. And,
sure. But I guess that's like you were saying earlier about, you know, keeping those fundamental things to the forefront, you know, like you said about remembering about how to do paste up and all the old style of doing things. Keeping up your drawings equally is important, isn't it? So that you're not just relying on your Mac all the time.
Yeah, like, you know, we had one intern in, and she was like, you know, I feel like I'm being restricted because I don't really know how to use Adobe Illustrator. You know, I can't make my idea. And I'm like, well, you need to like, don't spend loads of time on the computer trying to like do something that might not even work anyway, and you're being restricted by the tools that you're still learning. Like, you know, just draw it all out, plan it all out on paper. You know, your concepts, like if you you know, when we're doing branding, you know, it's sort of like, you know, create the presentation in your head, like, you know, from, you know, how you're going to present this to your client, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I think for me that was like my piece of advice, like with the interns are, you know, asking me that anyway. It's sort of like, you know, like John was saying, you know, it's the idea that matters, you know. At the end of the day, you can learn the software, you know, but don't let like the fact that you don't know something yet restrict your creative process.
Yeah, sure. Because there's so many other forms of mark making that you can do to get past that bit. And someone else can always mock it up in Illustrator for you in like 2 seconds if they know what they're doing. So, you know, it's not like you know, the idea will carry across anyway, won't it?
Yeah. I mean, we've had that, like, you know, when you try and get like interns involved with like projects, and like it's sort of, it's, you know, it's sort of like you're on a deadline. It's like maybe it's easy for you if you just like sketch it, like, you know, and then we, you know, can get the ideas, like, you know.
But that's when you start getting excuses from some of them where they're like, but my pencil's broken. Oh, I only use blue pen, not black pen, you know.
Yeah. I mean,
so yeah, so
other things I would like, you know, like the same as the other guys are saying, don't have an ego. Like, you know, every job is what you make of it, you know, like, yeah, like you might think it's boring, but it's like, you know, everything you do, you've got to, you know, be professional. And like, you know, this is working for someone, they're paying you to do this. And like, you know, some like amazing corporate identities and have been done for like companies that people might consider, oh, that's a bit of a dull company, but you know, designers have turned it around and built something that's like really, you know, with award winning, like, you know.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think it's what you put into it, you know, sort of. And that's what I enjoy about branding is, you know, creating things from, you know, like new brands anyway, like from scratch, you know. Sort of,
there is a buzz about that, kind of something that doesn't exist, and then by the time you finish your product, you know, the project and the brief, there's this whole, you know, there might be a website and identity, and it does something interesting, and it's like, you know, it solves the brief, and suddenly it's like your baby sort of.
You're doing it like when you're doing startups, you know, you like the brand strategy, naming, right through to the, you know, and then you do the whole thing. Yeah, it's like, you know, that's an exciting thing to be involved in, you know.
And then it bombs in the first year. And then you get to do it all again for them, when they have the next idea. So the last question is usually has been a question from the previous person, which you then answer, and then you give me a question for the next person. So this was from our good friend Stuart Sargent, who said, is there anything out there that you wish you had designed? That was his question to you.
I like this. My answer, well, I did think about it. It's not the best looking logo, but like I quite like the story behind like the Nike swoosh. You know, where it's you know, it was designed in the 70s by the student designer again, and I think she got like, I was doing my research. She got paid $35 for it when she created it, like in the 70s, and then, you know. Then obviously with like Nike's like one of the most valuable companies in the world, and then she gets like I think they rewarded her like a few years back. She gets like $1 million,
$40,
the gold-plated ring, and I just think that's such a cool story.
What did they give her? Sorry, I interrupted you. What did they give her? They gave her,
I think it was 500 shares in Nike. So I don't know how much that would. I think I read somewhere it was worth roughly about $1 million. Like.
And quite right too. Those guys they've got so much money. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's the Michael Jordan documentary about, I think it's called The Last Dance, which is on Netflix, and it's like a 10-part series about his career and you know, basketball and everything. And one part of that is where he's talking about when Nike like approached him and said, you know, they wanted to do the shoe, and he didn't want to use that. He wanted to go with Adidas, but they didn't want him, so he went with Nike reluctantly. And now he's responsible for some like something like 50% of their revenue. And like I can't remember what the final figure was, but he gets something like $120 million a year from them or something, because the Air Jordans are still like the primary selling Nike shoe, which is just insane. And that's like every year. So every year he just gets a massive check from them, because he's, he signed some crazy endorsement deal back in the 80s that's now worth, this crazy money.
Yeah, I mean, I like that story, because you wonder if it could happen again. Like, like these days, like if you're, somebody's got no money for a logo. Yeah, what do we got 99designs.com or something. But like,
okay, yeah.
But on the other end, like branding's so integral to to startups now. It's such an important part of when people are building like the brand. It's not an afterthought anymore, is it? So
that's right. Yeah, that's right. And people spend a lot of time and money on, invest their time and money on getting that bit right. Especially now because of like social media and everything. Everybody's their own brand. So people are acutely aware of the images they're putting out. They're acutely aware of what they say. Their kind of tone of voice. And then when you're doing a startup business, you've already been trained in that thinking before you've even thought about a company. You already know the kind of do's and don'ts and what's socially acceptable, and then that just transfers over to sort of the branding side of things. And then people like you and I get involved, try and mess it all up for them, and somewhere along the line you end up with some really sort of nice design work. But you're probably right, which is I don't think I don't know if there's that many kind of hit and miss chances out there anymore. It's all a little bit more tactical and calculated, isn't it? Which is a shame, because I like the ones like stories like that where it's like, oh, I just like it's like the guy who drew the Mini famously drew it on the back of a cigarette packet, didn't he? And he was just like, initially, and now that's in the design museum as like the original concept for the Mini Cooper, I think it was. So things like that.
It's like old design stories,
So there you go. Speaking of old design stories, thanks for yours.
Okay, right.
So what's your
a bit there,
no, mate, it sounded great. I'm not going to edit anything. If anything, I'm going to edit stuff into it and just put more coughing, all that stuff. So the only thing I need to ask you is what your question is for the next person who comes along, who I'm not entirely sure who is. At some point, there's going to be a girl on this podcast. It's not just going to be this male-dominated. That's not the kind of ship I run in. At some point there will be. So that could well be the next person, but I'm not entirely sure whether that's going to come through yet or not. So, don't let that swing your question. If you want to ask your question for the next person, then fire away.
Well, going back to my, as I said at the start, I left school at 16 and went straight into this, and I didn't do a foundation course, so I didn't even really try other areas of design, like product design or fashion design or interior design, nothing. So I didn't have would that spark my interest? So my question is what would you do if you weren't doing your current job? Could you ever see yourself doing something else, or even do you plan a second career, later?
Yeah. I think that's an interesting question as well in the current climate, which is, I know I constantly keep referring back to the fact that there's a global pandemic, but it is making people, I think, and from what I've read and heard, sort of rethink what their careers are, because the people that are furloughed have had time to maybe look for other jobs, or for the first time in their life, or have started questioning whether or not their job's a viable job to keep afterwards, or maybe they're being made redundant or losing it, or getting fired or whatever. So I think that's interesting, because for people of our age, we tend to get a bit long in the tooth and stay in the same jobs. We're unlikely to move now, or certainly stay in the same sort of creative area.
I haven't got an answer. I don't know what else I'd do, to be perfectly honest.
You come back to the UK and we'd start our own computer game company, obviously. We'd buy that house that we used to rent, and I'd hide in the little alcoves every morning. So I miss it. I miss doing that. Doing it to the kids is just not the same. You know what I mean? I don't get the same reaction of them attempting to throw hot water on me. So I think that is a good one, because you never know when your job might potentially be taken away from you, or you might want to suddenly wake up one morning and think, I've thought more about this over the last months of being furloughed. Maybe it's time to start my fishing business, or whatever.
But online courses now as well, isn't there? So much you can.
Yeah. And
so.
and nowadays, if you're like, for me, I've been doing a lot of video editing and a lot of sound stuff and whatever, all to do with the channel, which has been great. I've learned a lot, but none of that would have been possible had YouTube not existed, because I'm doing something, I get to a point where I'm stuck, and then I'll try it a few different ways. It won't work. And then I'll be like, I'll just type into YouTube this exact problem, and then 50 videos come up and they solve it immediately. And then it's just like, that learning is just nothing compared to, even when we were at college, there wasn't that amount of information easily accessible like that. And I think it's just brilliant. It's just, you just learn so much.
I've done a bit of it myself, trying, After Effects, like the animation, making logos move, because that's more and more. So it's like I've been doing the same.
I'm finding now that at the tail end of projects, when it's just like a kind of an identity and all the kind of traditional business cards, letterheads, etc., there's this whole other sort of avenue opening up of moving image. Especially with like web promotion work and aside from websites, but like you say, like animations as well, which is just becoming like a staple part of the branding now, whereas before it would have been a harder thing to kind of, for me to do, certainly, and yourself to do, but you'd have to get a specialist to come in and do it. But now you can sit and learn After Effects, you can sit and do things in Premiere, and the timeline in Photoshop allows you to do so much, of that suddenly people who shouldn't be able to animate suddenly can. So watch out, world. Actually, I've been enjoying that part of it. I must say that's something that I always liked as a kid. Again, like you were saying about designing for computer games, I always thought it'd be cool to do like an animation for something one day. But then I realized that the idea of sitting in a room and just, turning pages and drawing the next frame and turning pages and drawing the next, that just seemed like it was slightly not quite what I wanted to do. But now, like, you sit and watch a YouTube video, and by the end of it, you know how to put together a basic animation for something. And I think that is really cool.
Program like After Effects, I mean, it's amazing. Like, it's like say you can. It's so in depth, isn't it?
But what I like about it is it is in depth, but also if you just gloss off the top of it, you can do some nice things. Even if you just do the basic things, it's just some simple animation, or you want a fireball to come out of the middle of your logo for whatever reason, then you can do that pretty easily. But then if you want it to be this 3D VR experience, you're probably going to need to spend a bit more time watching YouTube channels.
You need the power as well, the machine to do it as well. You need high-end stuff to do.
But that's something that also has improved in our lifetime, our career lifetime, is that I can remember being at college and like having a zip drive that had like 100 meg on it. It would just, and some of those Photoshop files would be would fill that alone, So
Cypress drives were 35 megabytes, I think.
And they weren't cheap. Like what? The zip drives were like 100 quid. The discs were like 20 quid each. And when you're at college, like that's an expensive. It's an expensive bit of kit to be carrying around.
It's been exciting, like seeing that progress. Like when you're working at that, and you're constantly having to keep up with it all the time. Like.
But that is it is interesting. It's a fun part as well, because I like the fact that like my watch is like something like 1,000 times more powerful than the first Mac I ever bought. It's just completely bananas. But I like the way that moves. I also like the fact that we can do this now. We can record a podcast, we can do the video, and you're in another country, and the quality is, I mean, it's getting better all the time.
It's noticeable, like compared to when I first came out here. Like, I remember, like when I first came out here, like my mum and dad would have to like use like phone cards to call me up. They didn't have like the Skype.
That was the same when I was in Cambodia. I couldn't, we had to get phone cards to call back, and you could Skype, but it wasn't it wasn't very good, and whereas now, like this connect, I mean, you could easily be in the next room. Do you know what I mean? It's like the connection's been really good. So what would be great now is if you just walked in and this was all a big elaborate surprise. But yeah, no, it's been really good. And so why? Well, what I guess we should probably just sort of wrap it up really, rather than rambling. So where can people see your work and what you're doing?
Oh, right. Yeah. So I mean,
this is the bit where you get to promo yourself now.
Links. I mean, I've got the the Brand New Days website. So,
yeah, I'll stick the links in the descriptor and everything anyway.
And there, what we do there. You can see the new work that we're doing out here.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Some of my older, I have got a site with some of my other bits on it. But,
don't worry about that. No, it's fine. Look, no one wants to see your creative ideas, Ian. Let's just stick to the business. Yeah, stick to the business side of things. I made a hat that's also a shoe. But seriously though, thanks for coming on the podcast.
No, I enjoyed it.
It's been brilliant to catch up with you.
It's interesting, because when you don't go over it until you do something like this, and you forget so much.
Sure, and also so I've known you for a long time, and the same with like the guys that I've spoke to before on this, and there's loads of things that I didn't know. About you guys. We've never really sort of spoken about it, partly because you're probably there at the time and to a certain degree, but like with Stuart, there's a whole big part of like his career that his education stuff I didn't know about. And, it's really interesting. So I do appreciate you coming on and telling the world, mate, this is going to be on the internet. This is going to be on the internet forever. Don't worry, it's just going to be on the internet forever. So as we get older, my idea is I'm sort of pretending they're interviews, but actually what they are is they're like records of memory. So that when we're all older and don't remember anything, and like we've got Alzheimer's and God knows what else, you'll be able to go back to the site and be like, oh, it's me as a young man, and then you tell it, narrating your history. I like that idea.
Yeah. I'm a bit nervous about watching this back, though. I'll be honest.
Don't worry, mate. When I finished, you'll be wearing a top hat and tails, and you'll be in some nudie bar. But seriously though, it has been really good to catch up with you, and hopefully we'll do it again. This isn't the end. This is just the start. From now on, whenever I speak to anyone, I always record it and attempt and put it on YouTube. That's it now. It's just a content machine, But yeah, I do really appreciate it, and I know there were a few people that are interested in what you've been up to. So been good to see you, mate. Yeah, I'll catch you later.
Yeah, great. Cheers, Jay.
Cheers, mate.
And there you have it. So thanks for listening. And if you haven't subscribed already, then please do. The YouTube and Apple podcasts are both free, and it helps me grow the channel. The links are in the descriptor below. So like, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Now, as always, be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another.